Lucasfilm sued for recreating Grand Moff Tarkin actor Peter Cushing's image in Rogue One, A Star Wars Story. And this actually was reported last month. So a friend of Cushing has alleged Disney did not have permission to recreate the actor's image with special effects for Rogue One. Disney tried and failed to have the case dismissed for a second time on September 9th, 2024. So Disney tried to get the case thrown out and failed both times. The plaintiff, Kevin Francis, is suing Lucasfilm through his film company, Tyburn Film Productions, and also brought claims against Rogue One producer Lunic Heavy Industries, the late executors of Cushing's estate, and Cushing's agency Associated International Management. Francis claimed he must give authorization for any recreation of Cushing's image following an agreement made between him and the actor in 1993, 1 year before his death at age 81. Lucasfilm claimed it didn't think it needed permission to recreate Cushing's image due to his original contract for Star Wars, the 1977 film, and the nature of the special effects. It also paid around $37,000 to Cushing's estate after being contacted by his agent about the recreation. What was the original contract? On September 9th, Deputy High Court Judge Tom Mitchison dismissed the appeal, stating the case should go to trial. I am also not persuaded that the case is unarguable to the standard required to give summary judgment or to strike it out. In an area of developing law, it is very difficult to decide where the boundaries might lie in the absence of a full factual inquiry. So the judge believes that there's enough to go to trial, so that's what's happening. There's the recreation, there's the original, and there's this. And I'm sorry, it's just, even when I saw it the first time, I just had really icky vibes from it. I just feel like it's so unnecessary and it's so jarring to the audience, especially if this is an actor that is deceased. It's just weird. I think it's disrespectful, honestly. I don't know what the original contract was, because that was what Disney was stating, that they had permission to do this. How do you have permission to do this in a contract that was written up in 1977 or whenever? Well, that was when the movie came out. What in there stated that it was okay to digitally resurrect him? So I don't know. So again, there was enough there for the judge to say it's going to trial, and dismissed Disney's, well, he said the attempts to dismiss the case. He's like, no, it's going to trial. And it's one thing, because we've seen like how many actors de-aged, and that's one thing. And they are mostly involved in the process. The most recently with Harrison Ford and Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, he was filming those scenes. I think it was a mixture of him and someone else, like a younger person. And I think the same was done with Mark Hamill in the Mandalorian season 2 finale. It was him acting it out as well as a body double. And it was his voice recordings that they used, mixing that up with how he sounded in the original trilogy of movies. But regardless, the actor was very much alive and able to work with them to bring that about. So it's very different when it comes to de-aging, because the actor is very much around and is able to consent, and most of the time they're working with it. They are actively a part of the production and filming it and acting out the scenes and recording the lines, even if they're tinkering with it. But it's really just ooky, I'm sorry, to do that when an actor is deceased. I always thought that was weird. And I think this has happened before, actually, before Lucasfilm. I think they did like Chanel commercials with Marilyn Monroe and recreated a bunch of like old Hollywood stars. That was years ago. I didn't like it then either. I think it's weird. Most recently, they had Ian Holm digitally resurrected with AI for Alien Romulus. And they actually had the estate's permission, his family's permission. He came out and said that. But honestly, it really, I think, is in poor taste. It's really ooky. I'm sorry. It's so unnecessary. It really looked bad. And it's very, I think it takes away from it because audiences are creeped out by it. It's very weird. I think they can see that, and it just comes across as very disrespectful. It just has the opposite effect of what the creators think that it does. Fede Alvarez thought that it was a good thing that he was doing, that, oh, Ian Holm was such a fan of this franchise, according to his family, he would have been okay with it. Does that still make it okay? I feel like it really marred the production. It's just wholly unnecessary. It looked bad, and at the end of the day, I'm of the opinion that I don't think it's anyone else's permission but the individual to directly state that. And at the time that a lot of these actors had already passed, I mean, was deepfakes and AI technology where it was? Was this a problem that they had to face? Like, whatever was in Peter Cushing's contract originally the 1970s contract with Lucasfilm, how was there any verbiage that made it okay for them to digitally resurrect him? I really don't think that was in there. Maybe some language as far as like how to use his likeness, but at the time, deepfake and AI technology wasn't where it was then as it is now. So I think there has to be specific verbiage, in particular when it comes to someone who's deceased, to grant permissions for that. So I think that's why it's going to trial, especially also because there's no way that the actor could have even known what that would have entailed when it comes to the use of his likeness. So if you don't know what you're consenting to, then is it really consent? Setting precedent for future is more important than this one case. Yes. And I hope this is out there. I'm really curious to see how this trial will proceed. And now when you have actors like Robert Downey Jr. putting their foot down and establishing what is okay, I'm actually really confused by this in particular because what was the actor strike about? I thought that that was a huge part of why the actors went on strike was the use of AI technology and deepfake technology and having all these actors having their likeness used without them being part of the production. So what did they negotiate for? I honestly don't know what the deal is with that when it comes to the specifics of the contract negotiations for the actors union. But I thought that AI was a huge holdup. I thought they got it all worked out. So apparently not, when you have actors now having to come out and say that they have to do their own personal due diligence to make sure that their wishes will be respected. It's crazy that this has to be even said, that this precedent even has to be made, that studios can't just get the fact that this is in poor taste. And I don't think even audiences want it. That's another thing too. I just don't feel that audiences care that much, that they will look past the kind of the morbidity of it. It's very odd. It was very jarring for me in Rogue One. It still is. And the only thing why I think it works okay with Christopher Lee is that he already recorded these lines and they aren't recreating his image. It's an animated film, so it's purely his voice that he already recorded for. So that's the only time where I think that that's okay. Because technically what he did record, that was specifically for this world and these stories and for a little cameo, okay. It's just weird that we are now in the time where studios think that this is normal or okay, or that the fact that audiences even want it. I honestly think that Mando Season 2 finale, it's great overall. It's great to see Luke Skywalker being badass, but when we see his face, it ages so poorly. It doesn't look good. And in Book of Boba Fett, it looked a little better, but still looked uncanny, especially when he's opening his mouth, when Luke Skywalker is opening his mouth and having to talk. It doesn't work. You just have to have the real thing. And honestly, I feel like it's much better when it comes to the art of film, and that's like the only way to go. It is what it is. I don't feel like the audience is tied to one actor's image of a role that they think audiences are. I mean, Solo wasn't good. The reason why Solo failed wasn't because they used a different actor for Han Solo. The movie failed because, well, for one, it was coming off the back of The Last Jedi, which we just saw. And while I don't think he was the exact likeness, there's another actor who looks just like a young Harrison Ford that actually played a young Harrison Ford in The Age of Adeline. But they took the wrong lesson. They think that that failed because they didn't have a digitally recreated Han Solo. And again, also Harrison Ford is still around, so there wouldn't have been that issue anyways. But it would have been fine if you'd recasted someone if that was necessary. The movie didn't fail because of that. It failed because it wasn't a good enough story. Also, you had significant production issues behind the scenes, so that was definitely present on screen, how the narrative worked out. So I don't know why they thought that that just gave them carte blanche permission to only do de-aging or digital resurrection. I just don't think the audiences like it, and I just wish that they would catch on to that. And I think for both times, for the actor who actually did perform the scene for Tarkin, Moff Tarkin in Rogue One, because they had an actor actually do the scenes and they just pasted Tarkin's face onto. Same thing with Mark Hamill. He was alive, but still they did the same thing. They had someone acted out the scenes. And I think both cases, the actor who was doing that looked a lot like the original actor. Like the actor who played Luke Skywalker in Book of Boba Fett, I think it was the same one who did the Mando scenes. He looks a lot like Mark Hamill. And you also have Sebastian Stan, who people have been fan casting as well because they look so much alike. But there are actors that definitely could pull it off. It's just crazy that they would just prefer to put a digital mask on somebody and have that just really morbid vibe, especially if they're deceased. To have a deceased person's face on someone who actually could pull off a similar likeness and a similar performance. And it's not like we saw Moff Tarkin for that much in Rogue One either. So was it really worth it, all of this headaches? So Rogue One actually didn't make that much money. They had, again, a lot of production issues that inflated the budget. And I think it made maybe a moderate success. It may have won back its spending budget. I don't know if it was profitable though. And now it definitely isn't profitable if they're going to have this really expensive lawsuit on their hands. Rogue One is still costing them. And they didn't even make much money, if they even made any, after all the production issues behind the scenes. And again, its gross was just not, it wasn't that much in comparison to the other Star Wars films that were making $1 billion. Disney Lucasfilm is just a mess on all this.